Hello and welcome to Money Matters. I am Folashade Ogurinde. With the Nigerian government's determination to lead the country to its path of economic recovery, the nation's apex bank says it would leave no stone unturned in its quest to maximize all sources of revenue generation, especially in the areas of diaspora remittances and export sector support, as well as support government by any means possible to guarantee economic growth. This comes as Fitch, a well-respected rating agency, criticized the federal government's repeated resort to its Ways and Means facility with the Central Bank of Nigeria. This report has the details. With the country's rising inflation and continued fall of the naira, there are more than enough questions for the Central Bank of Nigeria to answer at its first monetary policy meeting. The Fitch report on CBN's lending to government is another critical issue which the CBN governor, Godwin Emefiele, tries to explain to journalists.
The Central Bank of Nigeria is banker to government. Second, let it be known that the Central Bank of Nigeria is a lender of last resort. If government cannot finance all its obligations, I think it would be irresponsible on the part of the Central Bank of Nigeria as a lender of last resort not to support the federal government.
However, finance expert disagrees with Emefiele's defense. He explains that federal government's new borrowing from the CBN has repeatedly exceeded the Ways and Means facility limit in recent years, which could adversely affect Nigeria's economy.
The Ways and Means financing of deficits is not good for the health of the economy. This is because Ways and Means financing is what we call high-powered money. It is highly inflationary, and even in the literature, is sometimes regarded as inflation tax. So ideally, it should be the very last resort, and it should be something that should be avoided as much as possible.
Meanwhile, CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele has issued a stern warning to licensed IMTOs who bring in Forex through unapproved channels. He reiterates that guilty parties will be heavily sanctioned.
If you are a licensed IMTO, the proceeds of remittances must come into the country as foreign currency through only our deposit money banks, not through mortgage institutions, not through any fintech. If you use any of those, we find it, we will ask the banks to close the accounts of those fintech or those mortgage institutions. And we would also instruct the banks, we will block your BVN, you will not be able to conduct banking business in Nigeria again. It is important that people understand this. We cannot be calling on central bank to find dollars and we see where it is, and we say let people bring them in, and people begin to cut corners because they want to game the system.
While economic and financial stakeholders keenly monitor the outcome of CBN's monetary policy, Nigerians are hopeful for a speedy economic recovery amidst rising inflation rates and COVID-19 effects. Now, joining me on this conversation is Johnson Chukwu, the CEO of Cowrie Asset Management Limited. Glad to have you on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Now, the Fitch report on the size of credits to the federal government did not sit well with the CBN governor, who said the Apex Bank could not sit back and do nothing. Now, do you agree with the CBN's defense?
I don't think the issue is whether I agree with the CBN statement or not. The key thing we have to recognize is that the government has been wrapping up budgetary deficit, not just last year when there was COVID-19 pandemic. Since 2015, the government has not been able to balance its books. We've had budgetary deficit which we are partly funded by Ways and Means. So what Fitch was referring to is not just a one-off event where the central bank had to fund the federal government to the tune of more than 3 trillion naira in 2020. But the fact that 2015, 2016, 2017, and 2018, as well as 2019, even at periods when the economy was not in a recession, the central bank had to weigh in to support the fiscal authorities by ways and means. So I think that's the issue. And it all boils down to how prudent is our national economic planning, how prudent is our fiscal plan, and how do we address this on a permanent basis. So I'm not going to pick issues with the position of the CBN governor or that of Fitch, but I also want all the parties involved, particularly the central bank, to recognize that, look, the issue that Fitch was referring to is not just in relation to a single year funding of the fiscal authorities by ways and means or overdrawing of the federal government accounts. No doubt the central bank is a banker to the federal government and a banker of last resort. But the key thing is that that role should be played with some level of circumspect. You are not going to continue to fund the central bank, the federal government, infinitum. And there must be some pressures that conditionalities that have to be attached so that all the government agencies, all the government parastatals, and the federal government itself will be more prudent in use of economic resources.
Now, according to the Fitch reports, federal government's new borrowing from the CBN has repeatedly exceeded its limits in recent years. But most importantly, published statistics indicate that the amounts borrowed have been rolled over repeatedly in recent years. Now, is this something we should be worried about?
Yes, absolutely. If the federal government continues to borrow from the central bank, it's creating a hole in the books of the central bank. I know there's ongoing discussions or conversations that the federal government is going to issue some instrument to securitize those funds that are borrowed from the central bank. You cannot continue to borrow indefinitely from the central bank. When you borrow, you create liquidity surface. So you create some liquidity pressure. So part of the fight the central bank has been fighting to keep inflation rates low, we are induced by the fact that the central bank also had to fund the federal government by ways and means. You have it endangers the exchange rate because it puts a lot of liquidity into the system and therefore put pressure on the exchange rate. It also leads to an increase in inflation rate. So these are not good for macroeconomic stability. And then it creates an unfunded asset in the books of the central bank.
Now let's talk about revenue generation through Forex. The CBN governor said focus would be on diaspora remittances and export sector support. He, however, threatened to sanction IMTOs who bring in Forex through unapproved channels. Could you tell us to what extent the actions of these IMTOs impact government's revenue generation?
You know, the international money transfer organizations, their job is basically to facilitate the inflow or outflow of foreign currency into countries. The key thing that the central bank had issues with, the central bank had come out with a regulation or a directive that all inflows, diaspora remittances must be paid in dollars. That will increase dollar liquidity in the parallel market space and obviously reduce the pressure we're having on the FX rate. And what the central bank with that, the IMTO, the International Money Transfer Organizations, will now be left with the normal margin. Unfortunately, they are used to making huge margin from the differential in the exchange rates between the rate that they pay to recipients of those monies and the rate they sell those funds at the parallel market. So the key thing that we're battling with a culture that has incentivized IMTOs to make abnormal profit within the Nigerian environment. And that's what the central bank is contending with, to say, look, you really can't continue that way. You must pay recipients of inflows in the currency of their choice, be it dollar or pound sterling or naira in case they choose to take the money in naira. And that, if they adhere to that, that will eliminate the margin they were getting or the spread they were getting when they pay those people in naira. And that's why the central bank is making threats to sanction the IMTOs that fail to adhere to the central bank regulations.
Well, certainly we'll keep our eyes on this matter, but it's this much we can take now. But thank you very much, Johnson Chukwu, CEO of Cowrie Assets Management Limited, for your time on Money Matters.
My pleasure.
We'll take a breather here. Money Matters returns shortly after this break. Just stay with us. Welcome back. It's been almost a year since Nigeria recorded its index COVID-19 case. And just like the rest of the world, nothing is being the same again. Most businesses in Nigeria's travel and tourism sector took a big hit and never fully recovered as COVID-19 infections continue to surge and countries implement lockdowns and safety measures to control infection rates. To discuss the state of Nigeria's travel and tourism sector and its chances of survival, I'm joined by travel and tourism analyst and founder of Nigeria Travel Week, Efetobo Auhana. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Now, it's no secret that COVID-19 has had an effect on Nigeria's travel and tourism sector. But to what extent, really?
It's been very terrible, just like the rest of the world. The tourism industry has been very badly affected. In fact, it's expected that about 30% of the tourism workforce will lose their jobs, or have already lost their jobs. Of course, because of the nature of tourism, when people cannot travel from one place to the other, then the industry suffers, because tourism is movement from point A to point B, whether for business or leisure or medical or whatever reason they have to move. So the apathy towards travel and the rising cost of travel, has been very, very distressing. Has caused serious problems for the tourism industry as we were now.
Now, certainly, amid a global COVID-19 wave and travel restrictions, do you think the travel and tourism sector recorded more losses?
Definitely. There's no industry that has been more badly affected by COVID. Tourism, of course, has recorded the most losses, whether it's Nigeria or anywhere else in the world. The statistics for Nigeria are not very much out there, but of course, globally, it's said that airlines, for example, alone are losing about $230 million daily, And when you look at the fact that 30% of the tourism workforce could lose their jobs, then the workforce for Nigeria is about 2 million, give or take. When you look at all of the subsectors from the airlines, the other transport subsectors in tourism, as well as the travel services with tour operators, travel agents, the hoteliers, the restaurants, all of this together contributes to that number. And this is not counting all of the other informal workers in the space, because beyond the main actors in tourism, you also have the allied sectors. Every tourist, for example, who visits a place gets to impact the environment, because now he's buying whether it's refreshments or whether he's shining his shoe or just buying perhaps a souvenir or something. So, all of those sectors are all badly affected when there's a hit on tourism.
Federal government has in some way tried to help the sector stay afloat through the bailout fund of 5 billion naira. Do you think the government is doing enough?
Well, I think that what we need at this point is beyond just money or financial palliatives. What I think is mostly needed at this point is policy, strong policy that helps us to focus on the areas of tourism that can be most beneficial to us in the short term and then in the long term. So what do I mean? Short term, we know that at this point, international arrivals are quite low. Yes, we've not been doing. We may not have been doing too good with international arrivals in terms of leisure travel. We've been doing a lot of business international arrivals. Now we ought to start to look at our domestic market. So how are we mobilizing our population to travel around the country? So those kind of policies that will get people traveling and that will get the players in the sector, doing business are those policies that we need the most. Because when you look at it, how much really can the industry be given to drive the industry? So yes, Lots of people have lost their jobs. Yes, a number of companies have folded up, but in the long run, when you look at the strategies that a number of countries are adopting to fight the COVID pandemic for tourism, then you see where Nigeria should be looking at, and that is mostly policy. How do we get people traveling? And then how do we build confidence that they can also travel safely whilst not jeopardizing their health?
Certainly, health is very paramount, but what ways do you think we can strike a balance between preventing a business collapse of the travel and tourism sector and ensuring COVID-19 safety protocols?
Yes, so basically, there's been a lot of work in the background. I know for sure that the Standards Organization of Nigeria, for example, had a committee that worked with the industry to look at COVID protocols and standards for every sector of the industry, whether hoteliers, tour operators, travel agents, and the like. Now, all of these standards mean that, every single business in the tourism space has to follow, clear guidelines to ensure that they keep their staff safe, they keep their customers safe. At the end of the day, it may mean slightly higher expenses for the businesses because now you're looking at reduced numbers, you're looking at all of the social distancing rules and the cost of sanitizing and all of that. But in the long run, what it then means is higher confidence for the customer or for the client who is going about traveling at this point in time.
Now, let's take a look at outlook for 2021. It's not surprising that, just as the CBN governor had said last year, that's in 2020, he projected that by first quarter of 2021, Nigeria might, move out of a recession. But, this is something that is not certain. What's your projection for the travel and tourism sector for 2021?
I wish we had data for our industry. Unfortunately, that's one of the biggest problems that we have. The truth is that the Nigerian tourism industry will cope, just like the rest of the world, because we have something going for us, and that is our numbers. So, unlike the rest of the world, where there has been, a number of countries coming together to create travel corridors or travel bubbles, as they call it, in Nigeria, we are one big bubble. Now, what that means is a number of countries come together and say, we open our borders to ourselves, we ensure that we get our people traveling, between different countries. You're looking at countries, for example, like Australia and New Zealand, for example, and Singapore and Hong Kong. Now, for Nigeria, all that we need to do is to say, let's get Nigerians traveling around. So with that population of 200 million people, if we target 2% of that population traveling around, whether it's for business or for leisure, I do not personally expect that we should have problems. Now, where we should have problems will be getting the message across, and I think that's what everyone in place in government and in every institution should be working at this point, getting that message across that look, you can travel within the country, ensure that you take all the safety precautions, ensure that you follow all the guidelines that have been laid down by the authorities, but then you can travel safely and enjoy your business or enjoy all the leisure facilities in the country. I think that this is a silver lining for us as a country. Before now, Nigerians will typically travel out of Nigeria for every single holiday, whether it's summer or winter or whatever. Nigerians only do outbound travel. This has helped us to see that times like this can come, and then we have to look inwards. And thankfully, a lot of the stakeholders have been doing a lot more to bring about information and awareness about the options for travel within the country. So I think that this is a silver lining that could help us, and that's why I'm not too gloomy about the future for 2021 in terms of tourism, because I believe that this year Nigerians will get to travel a lot more about within the country, and that will in itself have a boost for the industry. Yes, of course, there's a sector of the industry that will be badly affected. That is the travel trade, who do outbound travel. Because of all of the restrictions with airlines and with different countries, their business will be hit. But this is also an opportunity for them to start to look at the domestic business. And of course, once you have the numbers, everyone will be able to benefit from that boom.
Now, indeed, we hope sectors like the travel and tourism would find a way to make the best out of this situation. But I must say I like your optimism for this sector. But thank you very much, travel and tourism analyst Efe Tobo Ahana, for your contributions on this matter.
Thank you very much.
And it's a wrap on the program. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.